So there's a lot of things to be said about this new legislation that the government are proposing to do with journalists, particularly now, not the mainstream media, because let's be fair, the mainstream media in this country, 98% of them, are paid off by the government. Basically, the government run their organisation. What I mean by that, if we look at the public broadcast, the RTE, hundreds of millions euro in bailouts, and along with the other mainstream media in Ireland. So basically, they will never question the hand that feeds them. So this is targeting independent journalists. This is trying to shut people up. It's the same with the hate speech bill, as we see with what the government are trying to do now with basically policing online people's speech. This is basically another example of this because there's no really excuse for the Gardaí to be doing this and for the Irish state to be looking for these powers. And usually I pay attention to these things, and usually I hear about these things. But this bill, particularly what the sees people's laptops in terms of journalists, and mainly this is probably targeting citizens because, as I say, the mainstream media are basically paid off by the government, basically the government out. But what they see is people's laptops and phones and stuff. Say, for example, if you're a whistleblower, if a whistleblower went to a member from Garda Síochána, say, for example, seen bad conduct in the Garda Síochána, wanted to spill the beans, they went to a journalist. The Gardaí could find out what journalist it was. Haul them into the Garda station, take their devices, look through their devices, just because they want to. To find out who was squealing on them, and of course they can find out who squealed on them, who spilled the beans, and go and abuse them, of course, too. But again, it's all about the state's control. That's what they want. This is the main thing because there's no other excuse. There's no excuse for why they want this sweeping legislation in terms that they can seize journalists' phones, etc. And it's important to note too, it's a very important job. Obviously, for independent journalists, people that are not bought off by the state or by pharmaceutical companies, etc., it's a very important job being a journalist, informing the public on what's happening. Because the people in power, let's be fair, the one thing they hate is a proper journalist that would ask very, very tough questions to give them a very, very hard time. Because, that's very worrying for the state when they're trying to hide stuff, trying to get away with stuff, because the state always has something they're trying to hide. Every week they're doing something that they're trying to hide. And we see this every week in Ireland. And half of it doesn't get talked about in the media because the media are basically bought off by the government. But this is the thing. This legislation, I suppose, this bill that they tried, what it was talked about. Imagine in December the 27th, when everybody was on holidays. The reason why they done this, and this is no coincidence why they done it on this day, particularly December the 27th, because majority of people would have been on their Christmas holidays, enjoying time with their family, loved ones, and nobody would be paying attention to this, So that's why they kind of slid it in when nobody was looking. Because I didn't even notice it. I didn't notice until the day it was announced today about it. It just goes to show you because they didn't want opposition. But you know yourself, that's what the state has turned into. Wash things through the legislation. But again, this is unconstitutional, to be generally honest with you, because as I say, if people were whistleblowing, if somebody had an issue with something in the workplace, in the state's workplace, in Garda Síochána, the HSE, and went to a journalist to try and spill the beans, the state basically can use Garda Síochána now to shut them up. And that's pretty much what's been done here. Like, let's be fair, I don't trust them. I couldn't trust them that they're doing this. And again, they could say for the common good. That's what the excuse to be used soon by Simon Howes and Micheál Martin. This is all for the common good. But when you add in this, along with what to shut people up on social media, used to get their ID and stuff, to basically police them if they commit talk crime. Along with then they wanted to bring in the hate speech bill to shut people up again if they said anything bad, but anything at all that disagrees with the government narrative. When you add all that up, they're not your friend, the government. Let's put it that way. They're not your friend, and especially the state too. The arm of the state on Garda Síochána, they're not your friends too. But so this is probably going to be passed. We see what happens, but obviously it weighs a serious issue. But of course, the Gardaí shouldn't enforce this if they were told to enforce it. I know the Gardaí would say we're just following orders, but I would say to the Gardaí to tell them, command or whoever, tell them to go and follow it themselves, because no Garda should do it. As simple as that, no Garda should do it, and then and the same with any post, they shouldn't give it to them. To be totally honest, any journalist and stuff, especially if you're an only journalist, etc., you shouldn't give anything to the Garda Síochána unless they have evidence that you're literally concluding with an enemy or doing something very, very suspicious or something like that. But if they're just saying, we just want to have a look because we think you're committing top crime by talking to people that you shouldn't be talking to, you're exposing things that you shouldn't be exposing. But this is the thing, this is the next part too. We all were, a few months ago, Philip Dwyer, you probably have heard him before, but his phone was seized outside City West, and the Garda's excuse that was containing, he had suspicion of containing evidence, But of course, that footage of City West tape was all over social media, was everywhere. So, the Gardaí didn't have to look far, but it was just an excuse again. But they would need a warrant and stuff, of course. But as I say, the judges in this country are crooked. They're all crooked to the bone. The whole state is crooked, let's be fair. But this is very concerning because, as I say, if you're a whistleblower, and you go to a journalist and you say, I want to expose this corruption, I want to do the right thing, the state could find out and say, we want to shut you up. Because take for example, if it's the HSE and you find out that I don't know, there's hundreds of millions of euro going to some foreign company that is supposed to be supplying goods or something to the HSE, and it doesn't turn up and they don't exist, the company doesn't exist, it's just money going to nowhere. Obviously the Irish state doesn't want that getting out, that there's money going to nowhere, there's hundreds of millions going to some person in Dubai or something like that. They don't want that getting out, of course, and they want to shut people up and they want to shut it down and make sure that it's not talked about. Because that's, to be totally honest with you, that's the only reason why they're doing this. Like, there's no other reason why they would do this. And of course we know with the CIA and other countries and stuff too what they were doing in terms of monitoring people's phone calls, like journalists' phone calls and stuff. They do probably the Gardaí wouldn't put it past them to do that. But this is the next thing too, and I wanted to briefly. This is about a year ago. Grip Media, I'm sure people have heard of them before, but the only, in my opinion, the only mainstream. You would call it mainstream media too, but only media company. Like a media company is the right word to call them, that is actually questioning the government and stuff and actually causing a lot of trouble for them. A year ago, the Gardaí wanted to look at the Twitter messages, get the DMs and stuff and everything they do on Twitter, just because why not? And the judge signed off on it and said yeah. But the only thing that stopped them was X wasn't going to give it over to them, and they were rightly so, because the Gardaí said, oh, we pretty much just want to spy on them, to see what they're doing if they're committing talk crime. But yeah, the Gardaí were trying to do that, and only for X said it to them. They didn't inform the person, etc. The Gardaí. So the Gardaí too, have shamed themselves time and time again, and they will shame themselves if they do this to people, if they go along with this crack that the government are proposing. Because this is less time to spend on police in the streets. Because the main thing should be doing as a guard is making sure nobody's getting killed in the streets. Because at the moment in time, people are getting killed left, right, and centre, and the Gardaí are nowhere to be found. There's people getting robbed and mugged around the country, and the Gardaí are taking hours to turn up to them, to do anything about it. But then if you commit talk crime on the internet, they're there very quickly. But yeah, this state is turning into a joke. But I'm very concerned though, because it raises severe questions for society too. Because as I say, because the government are not doing this for the benefit of the society. It'd be different if they were saying, if I could sit here and say, yeah, they're doing this for society, to help people in society. They're not. They're doing it for their own agenda, to shut people up, and that's the main thing in the government. But I mean, let me know what you think. But as I say, I deem this as unconstitutional. Generally just unconstitutional. Because unless they have evidence to suggest, say, for example, a journalist is doing something suspicious, unless they have evidence, they can't just say, oh, we want to see it just because. Because that's pretty much what they're saying here. Just because we feel like it, we can take your phone and computer if you're not writing the right articles about the state in this. And again, the turn into North Korea 2.0. But I mean, let me know what you think. Subscribe more and bye.